He's in a very, very difficult position, arguably one of the tightest spots he's ever been in, and arguably of his own creation, if you like. And today's going to be a massive challenge for him. And it's anything short of a grovelling apology in the end, Julia, is not going to cut it, I don't think. And even a grovelling apology will leave a lot of people still questioning how they got to this point and how this string of parties has been allowed to sort of dribble out over many, many weeks, so that it looks even worse than it actually was at the time.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of people asking, where are these revelations coming? I mean, this was an email sent ahead of this May 20th party, which has been leaked to ITV. We know that the Daily Mirror and other papers have had a string of revelations. It's very much thought that his now arch nemesis, former senior advisor Dominic Cummings, is behind a lot of this, wanting to bring the Prime Minister down. But the point is, there were an awful lot of people who knew about these events, an awful lot of people who attended these events. And the thing that I think still blows my mind, and I think a lot of my listeners' minds, and I'm wondering what you think about this, is that anybody working in Number 10 at that time thought it would have been acceptable on the 20th of May 2020, when children couldn't go to school, when people couldn't attend their loved ones' funerals, when businesses were closed, when non-essential shops were still closed, and people had so many restrictions on their lives, that anyone thought it was acceptable to hold that party.
Yeah, and I think, when you think of it as a party like that, the invites went out, the invites went from the private office of the Prime Minister. It is one of those things that has that sort of gotcha moment. I have, until now, I have to say, been sympathetic to the idea that people who actually went into work because they were running the country, they were trying to get us through the pandemic, do at the end of a really, really stressful day have a drink together. I'm sympathetic to that.
Really? Because I mean, my team here at Talk Radio were working with it. People working in hospitals, people were working in supermarkets. They weren't allowed to have a drink. The law specifically stated they weren't allowed to do that.
Yeah, and that's the problem in the end, and that's why it's toxic. And it's not people who may have pushed the limits because they were victims of the law. If you like, these are the people who made the laws. So if they thought it was acceptable for them, and some people would argue that perhaps that is understandable, then it should have been understandable and acceptable for others. But they chose to be prescriptive about this. They chose to sort of lay down the law so that you couldn't play tennis and that you couldn't sort of, go for a walk in the park with two friends. You couldn't even move your family out of the house where you're all under the same roof to a park and be together as 5 or 6 of you. So they chose to do that. And that's why this is now biting them, frankly, on the backside.
And this is the issue, isn't it? Although this was, 2 years ago that this happened, the reality is that we can all remember very vividly. I was saying on air yesterday, I can remember, I know what I was doing on the 20th of May. It was the first time I'd seen my mum since the pandemic had begun. And I remember not hugging her. And we were only outside. And I was following the rules. I was terrified of being caught breaking rules. I was also just terrified of passing this virus on to my mother. I've come from London where it was endemic, and she lives in the southwest, and they had barely any around. And we were so many of us, millions of us, trying to do the right thing. And yet here were the people behind the walls of the Rose Garden of Number 10, just frankly, doing whatever they darn well please. In terms of how the Prime Minister handles this, you've advised him in the past. The reality is, we've got polls, one saying as many as 66% of people think that he should resign over this. That won't just be Labour and Lib Dem voters, that will be an awful lot of Tory voters as well. We saw an absolute, carnage yesterday when he sent out the Paymaster General to answer questions for him. Not a single cabinet minister or minister doing the rounds. No one's out today to defend him. Privately, they are all saying they're horrified and furious. Backbench MPs furious as well. I mean, this is not looking good for him. What can he do today? You're saying a grovelling apology. If he's going to apologise, he has to say he attended the party. If he attended the party, and he has not admitted to this point attending the party, but he hasn't denied attending it, does he not then, simply as a matter of integrity, have to resign?
That's for others to judge. I mean, my personal view is it'd be quite bizarre when you think of the historic reasons why people leave Number 10, say that a Prime Minister who has, led the country, has a healthy majority. There is nobody offering an alternative view of health, education, nobody offering to reverse Brexit, nobody questioning the success of the vaccine programme in particular. it would be slightly bizarre for somebody to leave office because they actually had a party in their own garden.
No,
Toxic
no,
though it is.
no. Having a party in your own garden isn't an offence, except when it is. Can a prime minister stay in his job if he has admitted to breaking a law that he explicitly brought in for everyone else?
Yeah, I can see why it's toxic. I still think it's slightly bizarre when there are prime ministers who've taken us to wars or who've gambled the future of the country, and changed its, opened up the possibility of leaving Europe, which wasn't David Cameron's plan, for instance. I still think in the great scheme of things that it is a sideshow. It's a very toxic one, very understandable, but it's an odd reason historically to leave office.
No, it's not an odd. No, Guto, it's not an odd reason. When if we care about integrity in politics, one of the things that I really object to, having been a political journalist for many, many years, is politicians or their advisors who think that they are better than, different than, above the rest of us mere mortals who are just voters. If they think that they are cleverer than us, that they are wiser than us, they're more moral than us, which means that they don't have to obey the rules and the laws that they impose on the rest of us. When a government makes a decision to tell me and my listeners whether or not they can see their grandchild, their grandmother, their best friend, their lover who happens to live in a different household, when they stop my child or my listeners' children from going to school, when they close down the businesses of the people who are listening to my show, then I'm sorry, they should be obeying the same rules themselves. And the fact that they didn't, and the fact that the Prime Minister didn't, tells me he didn't really think a lot of those rules were necessary, certainly for people like him and his staff. Now, to live in a democracy and have a Prime Minister and his staff in Number 10 who think that they are above the law, I think is very much a resigning issue.
Well, we don't disagree that this is deeply, deeply offensive as well as toxic. I just question whether it's a hanging offence, but it is one that requires a massive degree of remorse, a lot of context introduced, and literally that grovelling apology and a sort of promise that it won't be like this in future. What I'm left wondering is whether now they're still passing laws that, they think are sort of optional. Because in the end, they're not, in the end, the Prime Minister's instincts are libertarian. And I've been surprised how willing he has been to impose very, very prescriptive and specific laws on the rest of the UK. Had he not done that, had he said, look, the scientists tell you the equivalent, if you like, of don't smoke or you will die, but I'm not going to ban smoking, that would have still left it to our discretion. That would have given him a way out. And I think that's what frustrates a lot of Conservatives, is they've not been comfortable with the laws that they imposed on others. But having chosen to do that as an administration, then you are right. You have to abide by those laws. And that's in the end where this comes back, beyond all else, to a flawed policy, an approach to something that seemed at odds with Conservative instincts, certainly at odds with the Prime Minister's instincts. And clearly, by their behaviour in Number 10, they did not think that those laws were necessary to protect the public. Yeah. Because I don't think any of them were sort of partying thinking, I don't care if I get COVID. They obviously thought it was safe. Yeah. And if they thought it was safe for them, they should have thought it was safe for us. Now, that's probably not the popular view out there. There was a massive appetite across the UK for really prescriptive, oppressive interventions, and the government drifted into it. Yeah. They drifted into suspending personal judgments by saying we'll follow the science.
Indeed.
Well, scientists are brilliant people, but they're not elected to make judgment calls on the rest of us that we can hold them to account to and kick them out.
Absolutely, but also there was a massive clamour from the public because of the scaremongering campaign in the media that was going on in the media, the adverts and those press conferences that were telling us that we should be behaving like that. It was, look, we know from Sage Minutes there were deliberate campaigns to scare us into our homes, and that's what they did. In terms of Boris Johnson's future, then, actually, I would think this, having been a journalist for many years, Tony Blair was very much Teflon Tony. The amount of times I'd covered a Prime Minister's questions where everyone was saying, oh, he's on the ropes, this is it for Tony Blair, and he survived that. He's not going to go today, he's not going to fall on his sword, he doesn't do that sort of thing, that's not how it works. But if we are seeing, this cost of living crisis, we've got all of this anger on the backbenches, we've got an awful lot of cabinet ministers jostling to try and take over the reins of power, we've got the energy bills going up, we've got got those national insurance rises coming. We're going to be seeing, a lot of problems ahead of those May local elections. So especially in April, a lot of people's finances are going to look really dodgy. Do you think if he does badly in the local elections, either the Tory voters go to another party or they just simply stay at home, that actually then there will be a leadership challenge?
Well, when you describe the scene like that, who would want to take over the job at this point in time? That's one of the things that's working in his favour. People will think, well, let him sort of get us through this. In the end, he has proved time and time again to have a sort of capacity, Houdini-esque, to get out of a tricky situation. And I still think he is capable, perhaps, of wriggling out of it on this occasion, because no matter how angry people are there across the UK, which is understandable and unavoidable in the end, there is not a chance for them to vote on who they want as Prime Minister in the foreseeable future. So, frankly, this is in the hands of Conservative MPs. And, arguably they are easier to win over than the rest of the UK at this point in time. And having won them over and then reminding them of what lies ahead and reminding them of the agenda and what they can achieve together, then it's doable. But he has no doubt sort of hemorrhaged a lot of support and authority and credibility. And what they want above all else, I think, Conservative MPs will give him a second chance if he shows that he's got a grip on the situation. And what's most frustrating for them at the moment is this thing is going on and on and on. It's one thing to take a big hit, take it on the chin and get on with it, and then talk about the fantastic vaccine program. I've been proudly sort of helping boost people as a volunteer vaccinator myself. Those fundamentals are superb. Okay. There is no alternative vision for the UK at the moment across most of the policy areas. But people are wondering if he has a grip on his own household when he has to ask others to find out whether there's a party downstairs
or whether he attended it or not. Guto Harri, I can't help thinking that if you were still advising the Prime Minister, he might be doing rather better than he is right now. Guto Harri, former spokesperson and advisor to Boris Johnson.